What if Thanos had won Endgame? If you want to see more stories that never happened, subscribe to the Impossible Universe. The final battle of the Avengers begins with Thanos coming back to the present, while the Infinity Stones are being reassembled in the past. Thanos takes the Infinity Stones from the Avengers with the power of his past ambition and ruthlessness. No matter how much the Avengers try to get the glove and the stones back, they cannot resist the power of Thanos. And Thanos snaps his fingers with his glove. He destroys half the world and all the Avengers so that they can never wage war against him again. With the power and ambition of the stones, Thanos begins to wage war across the universe. Meanwhile, Thor, still alive because he is a god, tries to grieve his loss from a remote part of the village of Asgard. Years later, a group of people living in different universes come to the village of Asgard. Heimdall interrogates these people at the entrance of the village. Heimdall says to them, "Why have you come here? Don't you know that no one but Asgardians can enter here?" One of them, a man, steps forward and says, "We were living in one of the most beautiful lands in the universe until Thanos came." "What did Thanos do to you and why did you come here?" asks Heimdall. The man says that Thanos destroyed our city. He killed our families. We managed to escape and the rest of us were forced to become his slaves. Thanos destroys every city he goes to and makes slaves of those who stay behind. When asked why you came here, he says that Thor, the god of lightning, lives here. He fought against Thanos before and maybe he can fight again. Yes, he is here. But I am sure he is in no condition to help you, says Heimdall with a sad look. Heimdall brings the man to Thor. Thor was sitting in his own cottage in a remote corner of the village, sipping his drink, a tired look on his face as if he had forgotten everything. His eyes wandered far away as he listened to the man Heimdall had brought. The man approached Thor and said, "Please help us. Thanos is destroying everywhere he goes. You are the only one with the power to stop him." Thor answered without looking up, "You have come here in vain. I fought against him with the Avengers and lost. What more can I do? I am a relic of an old god living in a small hut with a dripping ceiling. I am of no use to you, but you're Thor, god of thunder. If you don't help us, we don't stand a chance," he shouted. Thor closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and said in a calm voice, "My time has passed. Now go and try to survive," he said. The man shouted angrily, "You were a god! What happened to you?" Thor did not respond to these words. He just sat there sipping his beer. The man fell to the ground in frustration and went to tell the bad news to his friends waiting outside Asgard. Night had fallen and the village of Asgard was shrouded in silence. Thor sat on the armchair in front of his hut, looking up at the stars in the sky where he used to live among them. The man's words echoed in his mind. "You were a god." Suddenly the face of his brother Loki flashed before his eyes. His death at the hands of Thanos, his helpless look in his last moments, tore at Thor's heart. He remembered Loki's wicked smile, their old jokes, their struggles together. Thor held his head in both hands and moaned, "Loki, forgive me. I couldn't protect you." There was silence for a moment. Then Thor's anger and pain began to rise inside him, and he remembered his brother's death again and said in a sad voice, "I couldn't protect you." Thor looked up at the sky and shouted, "We don't deserve this. We don't deserve what Thanos has done." He stood up, raising his hand to summon the power of lightning. But the lightning did not come. He had felt powerless for so long that he didn't even know how to get his strength back. In the morning, Heimdall found Thor sitting in front of the hut, not having slept until morning. Heimdall asked, "What are you planning to do?" Thor looked up and answered sadly, "Thanos took everything that was mine. Loki, my friends, the Avengers, my power, my honor. But I can't watch this anymore. I have to stop him." Heimdall saw the anger on Thor's face and bowed his head slightly and said, "Then you must fight as befits Asgard. You must remind Thanos that he is a god, but first we must find a way to regain his power." Thor thought about what Heimdall had said and stood up. "Okay, but how?" Heimdall began to think, using his wisdom minds. He had only one logical idea. Time travel. Thor said, Don't make me laugh, man. We've tried that before. We brought back all the Avengers. I didn't say bring back the Avengers. A god who can defeat Thanos. Let's bring back Odin, said Heimdall. Thor was astonished. He could see his father, Odin, again. Heimdall was right. Odin was the only god who could defeat Thanos. Thor's determination shone in his eyes as he considered Heimdall's idea. Thor was both glad and anxious to see his father, Odin. Is that possible, Heimdall? He asked, skeptical. Heimdall nodded confidently. We have technologies like quantum mechanics and time bending. But Thor knew there was a problem. How are we going to time travel? We have neither a machine nor a way. Heimdall looked at the Stormbreaker in Thor's hand and said, The power of this axe can reach not only across realms but through time itself. If you can focus, we can open a rift in time. Thor took a deep breath, gripped Stormbreaker tightly, and focused all his energy on the axe. Under Heimdall's guidance, a portal formed between lightning bolts and waves of light. On the other side of the gate, the splendor of the Asgard of the past shimmered. Heimdall said, We can only do this once. We have no choice. We have to succeed. Thor nodded and said, Let's do it. In the Asgard of the past, Odin sat on his throne, watching over the realms. When Thor and Heimdall suddenly appeared in the center of the room, Odin stood up in surprise. Thor? Heimdall? What is this? He asked, his eyes filled with confusion. Thor knelt in front of his father and fell at his father's feet. In a tearful voice he said, I have lost everyone, father. My mother, my brother Loki, my friends. There is no one left. Thanos killed them all. Please help me. Odin thought for a moment, then breathed heavily and said, The fact that the future Thor came to me like this shows how bad the situation is. My son, get up and tell me. What am I supposed to do? Thor said, You must come with us, father. We need you, he said. Odin took his spear from behind his throne and said, Then let us waste no time. Returning to the present, Odin realized that Asgard and the other realms had lost their majestic appearance and said, What has happened to these places? Thanos, I haven't heard that name in a long time, he said. I cannot defeat him alone. We need the other gods of the universe and their armies. A great battle awaits us, he said. Odin looked at Heimdall and said, Use the Rainbow Bridge and call upon the gods. I want them all here before the battle begins. Heimdall nodded and said, Yes, High King Odin. Gods from different realms were summoned. Athena, Zeus, Ra, Hades, and many more gathered in Asgard above the world. As each of them heard that Thanos was destroying worlds one by one, their rage for war and revenge grew. Zeus approached Odin and said, We cannot allow this creature to harm our realms. What is your plan, old friend? Odin turned to all the gods and said, We must unite. By combining our strength and wisdom, we will stop Thanos. This battle will decide our fate and the fate of the universe. Thor turned to the gods and said, Together we will win this war. Thanos will recognize the true owners of the universe, he added. When Thanos learned that the gods had come together, he laughed with contempt. Gods, they are all worth my one infinity stone. If they're going up against me, they'll end up no different than the Avengers. Thanos prepared his army and the warriors of the planets he had enslaved. He set out for Asgard on Earth to start the war against the most powerful gods in the universe. Huge ships appeared in the skies of Asgard announcing Thanos' arrival. Thor squeezed Stormbreaker and joined his father. Odin turned to his son and said, This will be a test for you, Thor. You must prove to Thanos that you are a god. War broke out in the lands of Asgard. Zeus' thunderbolts, Ra's sunbeams, and Hades' forces of death ravaged Thanos' army. But Thanos, with his Infinity Gauntlet, was impervious to the gods' moves. Thor remembered his father's words and hurled Stormbreaker at Thanos. Blocked by the power of the gauntlet, the Stormbreaker returned. But in the meantime, Odin distracted Thanos, giving Thor an opportunity to attack. Thor summoned all his strength and dealt Thanos a fatal blow. Thanos felt pain for the first time in a long time. At the most critical moment of the battle, the gods worked together to deprive Thanos of the Infinity Gauntlet. Thanos was no more than an empty-handed soldier. Odin neutralized the gauntlet with the power of his spear, and the gods broke Thanos' power and defeated him. When the battle was over, the lands of Asgard had been destroyed, but the gods had triumphed. Thanos had lost the power given to him by the Infinity Stones, and had lost the battle because he had underestimated the gods. Odin approached him and said, "If someone like you tries to disrupt the order of the universe again, he will always find the gods against him." Thanos collapsed to the ground, his strength gone. The gods gathered together, taking the Infinity Gauntlet. Zeus said, "These stones must be erased from the universe forever. Their power must never be used again." Thor turned to his father and said, "But father, with these stones we can bring back what we lost. We can bring back the Avengers." Odin thought for a moment, then looked at Thor. "It is your decision, my son. If you use the stones, you must pay the price." Thor agreed to use the Infinity Gauntlet to bring back the Avengers, even though he knew the price he would pay. He put on the Infinity Gauntlet and gathered all his energy. His father Odin, Heimdall, and the other gods were waiting around him. After Thor put on the gauntlet, he felt a great pain from the energy of the Infinity Stones, but he had to do it. "Avengers, come back," he whispered through clenched teeth. The sky lit up, and in an instant, all the friends he had lost appeared in the war-torn land of Asgard. Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, and the others looked around in amazement. As Thor slumped to the ground, Tony approached him and said, "You've been a hero again, huh?" "Thanks, big guy," he said. Thor smiled and said, "Heroism is your job. I am God, it is my duty." And the world returned to its old order. You can continue from the video on the top right and left.